The cracks she ignored. Nima had learned to read silence better than words. The wine tasting at Purple Leaf had gone smoothly, just like most evenings lately. Soft jazz played in the background as the last guests thanked her, complimenting her selections and promising to return. She smiled politely, but her eyes kept drifting to the door, not because she expected someone to walk in, but because part of her still hoped. She already knew the truth. By the time she locked the door and turned off the lights, her phone buzzed on the counter. A single message, short, careless. "Don't wait up. Work thing ran late." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. 6 years ago, when she had first met Mackie Queenland, she would have waited. She would have worried. She would have made excuses for him before he even asked. Back then, he was magnetic, an artist with restless hands and bright eyes, full of ideas about meaning, rebellion, and beauty. They had met at a contemporary art exhibition. Nima barely remembered the artwork, only how confidently he spoke about it. He had laughed when she admitted she didn't fully understand modern art. "That's refreshing," he said. "Most people pretend." A week later, she stood in his studio, surrounded by unfinished canvases and wild sketches. He talked about creating something real, something that mattered. She believed him. She believed in him. That belief had slowly become her biggest mistake. When Nima reached home that night, the house felt strangely empty and overcrowded at the same time. His presence lingered everywhere. A half-empty coffee mug, art magazines scattered across the table, an unfinished sandwich in the kitchen. She sank onto the couch, exhaustion pressing into her bones. This house had once been their project. Now it felt like territory she maintained, while he merely occupied it when convenient. Mackie stumbled in after midnight, smelling of smoke and cheap whiskey. He tossed his jacket onto a chair without looking at her. "So?" she asked quietly. "How did the meeting go?" He scoffed. "Didn't show. Waste of time." She nodded, not surprised. "I'm sorry." His eyes snapped toward her. "You're always sorry. You love this, don't you? Watching me fail." "That's not fair," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I've supported you for years." "Support?" He laughed bitterly. "You run your little shop, count your profits, and remind me every day that I don't earn like you do." "I never said that." "You didn't have to." The argument followed its usual path. His resentment, her exhaustion, the same accusations recycled again and again. She pointed out that he hadn't painted seriously in over a year. He claimed creativity couldn't be forced. She said effort still mattered. He accused her of turning everything into business. At some point, something inside her went quiet. Not anger, not sadness. Clarity. The breaking point came later, when the conversation shifted, when he mentioned her father, when he spoke about the inheritance. "You know," he said casually, "that money could finally let me focus on my art. It's not like it's just yours." Her chest tightened. That money wasn't just money. It was her father's lifetime of work, his legacy, his protection. She realized then that this wasn't about love or art or failure. It was about entitlement. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror after he stormed off, studying her reflection. Dark circles under her eyes, a pale face, but something else too. Something steady. Her father had looked at her like that once, determined, certain. That night she didn't sleep beside her husband. She closed the guest room door and made a decision she had been avoiding for far too long. The next morning, the air felt cooler than usual. Nima awoke early, brewed strong black coffee, and opened her laptop. She didn't cry, she didn't hesitate. She researched divorce laws, asset division, her rights. The more she read, the calmer she felt. When Mackie walked into the kitchen, yawning like nothing had happened, she didn't flinch. "I want a divorce," she said calmly. The coffee cup froze in his hand. "What?" "I want a divorce," she repeated. "This marriage ended a long time ago." For the first time in years, she didn't explain herself. She didn't need to. Nima thought asking for a divorce would be the hardest moment of her life. She had no idea that what came next, threats, secrets, and a will her father had carefully prepared, turned her quiet decision into a legal and emotional war she never saw coming. When calm turns into threats. Maki didn't shout at first. That was what unsettled Nima the most. He stared at her across the kitchen table, his expression unreadable, as if her words were a puzzle he hadn't expected to solve so early in the morning. Then he smiled, a slow, tight smile that never reached his eyes. "You're being dramatic," he said. "You always do this when you're stressed." "I'm not stressed," Nima replied evenly. "I'm done." He scoffed and turned away, pouring himself coffee as if the conversation bored him. "You'll calm down. You always do." That sentence told her everything she needed to know. A week earlier, those words might have worked. She might have doubted herself. Today, they slid past her without leaving a mark. "I've already spoken to a lawyer," she added. That got his attention. He turned sharply, eyes narrowing. "You did what?" "I informed myself," she corrected. "That's all." The silence that followed was thick and uncomfortable. Maki finally laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Fine," he said. "If you want a divorce, we'll do it properly." Something in his tone made her uneasy. He leaned closer. 6 years, Nima. 6 years of marriage. You really think I'll just walk away with nothing?" She met his gaze. "I'm not asking you to walk away with nothing, just not with what isn't yours." That was when his restraint snapped. "You think you're so clever. Your shop, your little success story, your daddy's money. You didn't do this alone." "My father's inheritance is not community property," she said firmly. He laughed again, louder this time. "Inheritance, business, savings, it's all money, and money gets divided." "No," she said, "it doesn't." "We'll see." The word hung in the air like a threat. He paced the room, voice rising. He talked about sacrifices, about supporting her, about opportunities he claimed he'd given up for her sake. Every sentence twisted reality just enough to make her doubt herself. Almost. Almost. Then he said the one thing that erased any remaining uncertainty. "I'll get a lawyer," he said coldly, "a good one, and I'll make sure I get my share, one way or another." She felt a flicker of fear, but it passed quickly, replaced with something stronger. Resolve. "I'm leaving for now," she said, grabbing her keys. "We'll talk through lawyers." "Oh no," his voice replied low. "This won't be peaceful, I promise you that." She didn't respond. She walked out before he could say more. Only when she sat in her car did her hands start to shake. 10 minutes later, she found herself parked in front of an office building downtown. She hadn't planned to come here. Her instincts had simply taken over. Eugene Brooks, her father's longtime lawyer. He looked up the moment she walked in and frowned. "Nima? What's wrong?" She told him everything, the divorce, the threats, the inheritance. Eugene listened carefully, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "He says he's entitled to half," she finished quietly, "including my father's money." Eugene shook his head. "That's not how it works." Relief washed over her, but only briefly. "However," he continued, "that won't stop him from trying." She exhaled slowly. "I knew it." There was a pause before Eugene spoke again. "There's something your father wanted me to explain if something like this ever happened." Nima straightened. "What do you mean?" Eugene removed his glasses. "Your father was cautious. He worried your husband might one day come after the inheritance." Her chest tightened. "So what did he do?" "He created a trust," Eugene said calmly, "a very specific one." Nima leaned forward. "All assets were placed into the Caldwell Family Trust. You're the sole beneficiary, but the funds are legally protected from spousal claims, completely." For a moment, she couldn't speak. "So Maki can't touch it?"
No, Eugene said gently. He can't challenge it. He can't access it. Your father made sure of that. Tears stung her eyes, not from sadness, but gratitude. Even in death, her father was still protecting her. But Eugene wasn't finished. There's more, he said, something you should be aware of, just in case things turn ugly. He opened a folder. Nima's heart sank. Nima thought the trust meant safety. She didn't yet know what was inside that folder, or how far Maki had already gone behind her to destroy her peace, her reputation, and her future.
The proof she never asked for. Nima stared at the folder as if it might disappear if she didn't touch it. Eugene slid it closer across the desk, his movements slow and deliberate. I need you to understand something first, he said. You didn't ask for this. Your father did this to protect you. She nodded, though her throat felt tight. Inside the folder were photographs, printed, clear, undeniable. Maki, laughing with a woman she didn't recognize. Maki's hand resting too comfortably on another woman's waist. A dimly lit bar, a hotel lobby, different faces, different nights. Nima didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She felt tired. I suspected, she said quietly, but seeing it is different. Eugene nodded. There's more than infidelity. She looked up sharply. Your father hired a private investigator during the last year of his life, Eugene continued. He noticed inconsistencies, loan applications under your husband's name, inflated income claims, missing tax documentation. Fraud? Nima asked. Nothing massive, but enough to matter, enough to give us leverage if he becomes aggressive. She closed the folder gently, as if it contained something fragile instead of explosive. I don't want to use this, she said after a moment. I just want to leave peacefully. That would be ideal, Eugene said, but people who feel cornered rarely behave peacefully. The word cornered lingered in her mind long after she left the office. That evening, she went to her friend Rowena's house. Rowena didn't ask questions at first. She poured wine, set out food, and talked about her garden, a new antique mirror she'd found, a ridiculous argument she'd overheard at the flea market. Slowly, the tension in Nima's shoulders eased. Only when the plates were cleared did Rowena look at her carefully. He threatened you, didn't he? Nima nodded. Rowena cursed softly. I knew it. That man has always been hollow inside. They sat in silence for a moment. You know, Rowena said gently, this isn't just an ending, it's a beginning. You don't have to shrink your life anymore to fit his failures. Nima smiled faintly. She wanted to believe that. But peace didn't last long. 3 days later, official documents arrived. Maki had hired Raymond Prescott, an infamous lawyer for ruthless divorce battles. The demands were excessive: half the house, compensation for emotional labor, claims on the increased value of her business, and thinly veiled threats. This is just the beginning, Prescott's letter concluded. Nima felt anger rise, but also something colder: preparedness. At the first legal meeting, Maki barely looked at her. When he did, there was no sadness in his eyes, only calculation. You think you've won, he muttered as they passed in the hallway. You think you're protected. She didn't answer. That night, she couldn't sleep. His words echoed in her mind. I know things about you. The next morning, Eugene called. The reading of the will is scheduled tomorrow, he said. I strongly recommend your husband be present. She swallowed. Why? Because whatever he's planning, Eugene said carefully, it's better he reveals his hand early. The night before the reading, Rowena came over with wine and chocolate, insisting on staying. You're shaking, Rowena said. Whatever happens tomorrow, you're not alone. Nima nodded, though a sense of dread settled in her chest. What could Maki possibly know? She had lived carefully, Honestly, there were no secrets that could destroy her, or so she believed. Still, when morning came, her stomach churned. The conference room was quiet, too quiet. Maki arrived late, dressed impeccably, wearing a calm smile that made her uneasy. He greeted Eugene politely, then turned to her. "Good morning," he said softly. "Ready? For what?" "For surprises." Her pulse quickened. As Eugene began reading the legal language of the will, Maki leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed, too relaxed. When the words Caldwell Family Trust were spoken, something flickered in his eyes. Not shock, not anger, recognition. That was when Nima knew he hadn't come unprepared. Nima believed her father's trust had ended the fight, but as Maki smiled during the will reading, she realized he hadn't lost at all, because he had one last move planned, and it could change everything. Relief washed over her, but only briefly. "However," he continued, "that won't stop him from trying." She exhaled slowly. "I knew it." There was a pause before Eugene spoke again. "There's something your father wanted me to explain, if something like this ever happened." Nima straightened. "What do you mean?" Eugene removed his glasses. "Your father was cautious. He worried your husband might one day come after the inheritance." Her chest tightened. "So what did he do?" "He created a trust, a very specific one." Nima leaned forward. "All assets were placed into the Caldwell Family Trust. You're the sole beneficiary, but the funds are legally protected from spousal claims. Completely." For a moment, she couldn't speak. "So Maki can't touch it?" "No," Eugene said gently. "He can't challenge it. He can't access it. Your father made sure of that." Tears stung her eyes, not from sadness, but gratitude. Even in death, her father was still protecting her. But Eugene wasn't finished. "There's more," he said. "Something you should be aware of, just in case things turn ugly." He opened a folder. Nima's heart sank. Nima thought the trust meant safety. She didn't yet know what was inside that folder, or how far Maki had already gone behind her back to destroy her peace, her reputation, and her future. The last move he never expected. The room felt colder as the lawyer finished reading the final clause of the will. Nima sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, listening to words she already knew, but watching the man across from her as if seeing him for the first time. Maki didn't look angry. He didn't interrupt. He didn't protest. He smiled. That smile made her heart sink. When Eugene closed the folder, silence followed. "As stated," he said calmly, "all assets belonging to Monty Caldwell were placed into a legally protected trust. The beneficiary is Miss Nima Caldwell. These assets are shielded from spousal claims in the event of divorce." Maki clapped slowly. "Well played," he said. "Your father really was thorough." Eugene raised an eyebrow. "Do you have any objections, Mr. Queenland?" Maki stood. "Not to the trust," he replied. "To something else." Nima's chest tightened. "I believe," Maki continued, "that my wife has failed to disclose certain information that may affect these proceedings." Eugene's tone sharpened. "Be precise." Maki turned toward Nima. "You didn't tell him, did you?" She met his gaze, steady now. "Tell him what?" His smile widened. "About the loan, the one you signed 2 years ago, under your shop's name." The room went still. Eugene looked at her. "Is that true?" "Yes," Nima said calmly, "and it was fully repaid last year. Documented, legal." Maki's expression faltered, just slightly. "That's it?" Eugene asked. Maki hesitated. "That's all you have?" Eugene pressed. Silence stretched. Maki's confidence began to crack. Eugene leaned forward. Because if we're discussing disclosures, perhaps we should also discuss your omissions. He slid a folder across the table. Mackie froze. The color drained from his face as Eugene spoke evenly. Photographic evidence of extramarital affairs, attempted financial misrepresentation, loan applications containing falsified income statements. Mackie's jaw tightened. That's irrelevant. To the contrary, Eugene replied, it establishes pattern, credibility, and motive. For the first time, Mackie looked afraid. I didn't want it to come to this, Nima said quietly. I wanted peace. Mackie laughed bitterly. You planned this. No, she said. I survived it. The meeting ended without drama. No shouting, no victory speech, just inevitability. Weeks passed. The divorce moved forward. The house was sold. Assets divided. Mackie's demands shrank as his leverage disappeared. His lawyer became less aggressive. His threats stopped. One afternoon, Nima stood alone in Purple Leaf, sunlight spilling across the shelves. The shop felt different, lighter, free. Rowena joined her with 2 glasses of wine. To new chapters, she said. Nima smiled. To choosing ourselves. Later that evening, Nima returned to the house one last time. She walked through empty rooms, memories echoing faintly. In the bedroom, she paused before the mirror. She looked peaceful. Months later, she received a letter, no return address. Inside was a single line. You won. I hope it was worth it. She folded the paper and tossed it away. Because she hadn't won, she had reclaimed her life. Some betrayals don't destroy you. They reveal who you were always meant to become. What freedom really costs. Life didn't change all at once. That surprised Nema the most. She had expected fireworks after the divorce, some dramatic sense of victory or release. Instead, the days moved quietly forward, one after another, as if the world hadn't noticed her private war ending. And maybe that was the point. She woke up one morning and realized she could choose what music played in the kitchen. She could leave a book open on the table without someone mocking it. She could work late at Purple Leaf without guilt or suspicion. Freedom arrived in small moments. The shop began to thrive in ways it never had before. Without constant tension waiting at home, Nema poured her energy into ideas she had once postponed. Tasting nights expanded. Local artists displayed their work on the walls. Customers lingered longer. Conversations grew warmer. One afternoon, a young woman browsing the shelves smiled at her and said, "This place feels safe." Nema felt her throat tighten. That word mattered more than any profit margin. Maki faded from her life slowly. No dramatic exit, no grand apology. His name appeared occasionally in legal paperwork, then less and less. Mutual acquaintances stopped mentioning him altogether. It was as if he had become a chapter no one wanted to reread. Months later, Eugene invited her to lunch. "Your father would be proud," he said, stirring his coffee. "Not because you protected the inheritance, but because you protected yourself." Nema smiled softly. "He always worried I was too patient." Eugene chuckled. "Patience isn't weakness, but knowing when to stop waiting, that's strength." That night, Nema went through her father's old belongings. Letters, notes, receipts, memories preserved in ink and paper. In one envelope, she found a handwritten line she had never seen before. "Love should never require you to disappear." She sat on the floor and cried, not from pain, but recognition. Rowena visited often. They cooked together, laughed loudly, planned trips they might never take. Sometimes they talked about love, sometimes they didn't. "Do you think you'll marry again?" Rowena asked one evening. Nema considered the question carefully. "Maybe," she said. but next time I won't audition for someone's approval." Rowena raised her glass. To that. One quiet Sunday, Nema received an unexpected email. It was from a gallery curator. Someone had seen Purple Leaf featured in a local magazine and wanted to host a collaborative event: wine, art, storytelling, a celebration of resilience. As she typed her reply, she realized something startling. Her life no longer revolved around recovering from damage, it revolved around creation. That realization settled gently in her chest. Late that night, as she locked up the shop, she noticed her reflection in the darkened window. Older, perhaps, but steadier, unafraid. She thought of the woman she had been when the story began, waiting for messages, shrinking her voice, explaining her worth. She wished she could reach back in time and say one thing: "You don't need permission to leave." As Nema walked home, the city hummed softly around her. Life moved on, and for the first time in years, she moved with it, unburdened, awake, whole. Sometimes the real ending isn't revenge. It's waking up one day and realizing the pain no longer has your address.